The glass left Grant's hand like a weapon. A crimson arc of wine sliced the air before crashing against my face. The sting of alcohol burned my eyes. The cold splash soaked through my blouse, and red droplets ran down onto the white lace runner. Behind me, the Christmas tree glowed in oblivious cheer, its lights twinkling as if mocking the silence that had fallen. 12 pairs of eyes froze. Some widened in horror, others narrowed with satisfaction. My husband stood over me, jaw tight, chest heaving. "Don't you ever humiliate me in front of my family again," he snarled. From the corner of the room, my daughter Ava clutched her tablet against her chest. Her long lashes didn't blink, her dark eyes steady and unafraid. "You shouldn't have done that, Dad." Grant's head snapped toward her, sneer faltering. "What did you just say?" Ava tilted her chin, her voice calm in a way no child's should be. "Because now Grandpa is going to see." The room shifted. Fear trickled across the faces that had moments ago smirked at my humiliation. Grant's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" Ava's thumbs tapped her screen. "I recorded everything, and I already sent it to Grandpa." Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and comment your country below. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. The house smelled of cloves and cinnamon that Christmas morning, the kind of fragrance that should have wrapped a family in comfort. I basted the holiday ham with a honey glaze, brushing carefully even as my ribs throbbed with every twist. The bruise still blossomed under my sweater, last week's lesson. I had become an expert at disguising pain, painting on normalcy like frosting on a burnt cake. "Olivia!" Grant's voice bellowed from upstairs. "Where are my cufflinks?" "In the drawer, top right," I called back, each word even, neutral, practiced. The trick was to sound useful but never apologetic. Too much of either could set him off. At the counter, Ava sat with her math worksheet open, but her attention fixed on me. She always watched now. She had learned, far too young, the language of danger. The slope of Grant's shoulders, the sharpness of his sigh, the ominous hush that preceded the explosion. "Mom," she whispered, pencil suspended midair, "are you okay?" The question punched through me harder than any fist. I forced a smile. "Of course. Everything's fine." But Ava's steady gaze didn't waver. "No, it isn't." Before I could answer, Grant's footsteps thundered down the stairs. He swept into the kitchen in a pressed shirt, already scowling. "This place is a mess, and my mother will be here any minute." He froze mid-sentence when he noticed Ava watching him. For a flicker of a second, something like shame crossed his face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Ava, go to your room. I'm doing homework." I said now. His voice cracked like ice. Ava moved slowly, gathering her books, and brushed my hand as she passed. A silent squeeze. At the doorway, she turned back. "Be nice to Mom." Grant's jaw tightened. His nostrils flared. I jumped in, desperate to diffuse the spark. "Ava, go on." But I saw the steel in her jawline, my father's steel, before she disappeared up the stairs. The doorbell rang. The Whitmans arrived in a gust of cold air and superiority. Jasmine glided in first, her eyes scanning every garland and wreath with thinly veiled contempt. "Oh, Olivia, you've changed the decorations. How quaint." Kevin smirked as he shrugged off his coat. "Smells good in here, for once." His wife Melissa gave a weak smile, clearly uncomfortable, but said nothing. Florence swept me into a hug, whispering as her lips brushed my ear. "You look tired. Not sleeping well?" You know, Stressed wives always age faster. I swallowed the words that clawed at my throat and smiled. That was my role in their theater, the silent, grateful wife. During dinner, the performance sharpened. Jasmine carved slices of ham and announced with mock admiration, "Maxwell really married down, but he's such a good man for taking care of you." Kevin raised a glass to Melissa's promotion. Not every woman is content to just exist. Florence giggled. Remember when Olivia thought she'd be a nurse? Grant had to put his foot down. Someone needed to focus on the family. The truth stabbed through me. I'd been accepted into a nursing program once, years ago. Grant sabotaged it, told me I was too stupid, too embarrassing. But at this table, my silence was expected. Ava sat stiffly, hands clenched in her lap, watching every word, every smirk, every failure of her father to defend me. Her eyes were like cameras, cataloging cruelty. I excused myself to the kitchen, pressed my palms to the cool countertop, and tried to steady my breath. Through the doorway, I heard them laugh, heard Grant say, "She's been so sensitive lately. I don't know how much more drama I can take." "You're a saint for putting up with it," Jasmine replied. And then Ava's voice, cutting clear as a bell. "Why do you all hate my mom?" The table fell silent. "Sweetheart," Jasmine cooed, "adults are You call her stupid. You make her cry. You say she's lucky Dad puts up with her." Grant's chair scraped back violently. "Ava. Room. Now." "No." Her voice didn't shake. "It's not enough that you hurt her feelings. It's not enough that you yell. It's not enough when you—" "Ava!" His hand slammed the table. Plates rattled. I rushed in, shielding my daughter with my body. "Grant, please. She's a child." "A child you've turned against me," he snarled. "Pathetic. Useless." "Don't call her that," Ava said, eyes blazing. "Don't you dare." And that was when Grant's rage broke through the last veneer of charm. He snatched the goblet from the table and hurled it at me. Wine exploded across my face, dripping crimson onto the tablecloth, into the Christmas candles. The room gasped. The tree lights blinked on. My humiliation gleamed on every ornament. But Ava didn't flinch. She held her tablet like a shield and said evenly, "I recorded that, and the rest." The festive music had died. The night had shifted. The apartment isn't large, but every corner feels like freedom. Sunlight pours through wide windows that don't need curtains to hide bruises. A rosemary plant leans toward the glass. A secondhand couch is piled with Ava's notebooks and my nursing textbooks, and the faint hum of the city below is a lullaby, not a threat. 6 months have passed since that Christmas dinner. The night Grant drenched me in wine, my father Henry arrived with 2 officers from the base. He didn't storm or shout. He simply walked in with an emergency protective order and a voice that brooked no argument. Grant was escorted out while Jasmine wept, Kevin muttered excuses, and Florence found sudden fascination with her phone. The evidence Ava had sent was enough to trigger immediate action. The divorce moved fast, accelerated by the weight of videos, medical records, and CPS reports filed after Ava's teacher confirmed long-held suspicions. The house became mine temporarily. I sold it quickly and used the money to pay tuition and set aside an emergency fund. Grant fought for visitation, but the court granted only supervised meetings after he completed a full intervention program. He hasn't seen Ava yet. She hasn't asked. Life now is not luxurious, but it is ours. I'm back in nursing school, finally chasing the career Grant once insisted I was too stupid to handle. My professors don't see weak or pathetic. They see capable. I carry the weight of every ER patient I treat during rotations, every story of falling down the stairs that sounds too familiar. I don't pry, but I leave doors open, hotline cards slipped gently into purses, whispered reminders that accidents don't leave handprint bruises. Ava thrives in ways I once feared she'd never get the chance to. She joined her school's STEM club and spends evenings explaining robotics concepts I only half understand. She manages her own cloud backups now, keeping her skills sharp. She doesn't call it evidence anymore. She calls it protection protocols. Her vocabulary is terrifyingly adult, but her laughter, bright, unguarded, reminds me she's still a child. Our evenings have rhythm. I cook while she does homework. She quizzes me on anatomy terms while I check her algebra. We laugh more. We sleep more. We live without flinching at footsteps in the hall. Sometimes I still wake up in the night, heart pounding, convinced I'll hear Grant's key in the lock. But then I remember, the locks are new. The keys are ours. The nightmares fade in the light of morning. Success doesn't look like wealth or grandeur. It looks like peace in a small apartment. It looks like Ava smiling without fear. It looks like me daring to plan a future I once believed was stolen. We aren't just surviving anymore. We're beginning to grow. And every day, the space between who I was and who I'm becoming feels wider, stronger, brighter. The first sign of his return came not through a knock on the door, but in an envelope. It was delivered with the rest of the mail, sandwiched between holiday flyers and a water bill. The handwriting was familiar. Grant's. I almost threw it away, but curiosity outweighed caution. Inside was a neatly folded letter, written in careful, practiced lines. Olivia, I am so sorry. Christmas was a mistake. I let stress get the better of me. Ava needs her father. Please don't keep her from me. Let's start again. I crumpled the paper, but Ava caught my hand. Save it, Mom. That's evidence too. She slid it into a folder labeled Manipulation Attempts. She was right. A week later, his lawyer reached out. Grant wanted to negotiate unsupervised visitation. He claimed he'd completed a 2-week anger management course and enclosed a certificate like it was a golden ticket. He's changed, the lawyer wrote. He deserves a chance. But I'd learned that words meant nothing without patterns, and patterns don't change in 2 weeks. I sent the request to my attorney with a simple reply, not in the child's best interest. That should have been enough. But Grant wasn't finished. Soon, small shadows appeared in our lives. A gray sedan idling near Ava's school at dismissal. A bouquet of roses left on the hood of my car with no card. A text from an unknown number. I still love you. We can fix this. Ava snapped photos, logged dates and times, and we filed reports. Stop log call, her safety mantra, clicked into action like second nature. Then came the court hearing. Grant arrived in a navy suit, hair combed, face shaved, his charm polished back into place. He looked more like a penitent husband than the man who had hurled wine into my face while his family smirked. My family means everything to me, he told the judge, voice cracking at rehearsed intervals. I've made mistakes, but I've taken steps to change. Ava needs her father. Olivia is a good mother, but a child deserves both parents. His lawyer brandished the anger management certificate like a badge of honor. When it was my turn, I didn't raise my voice. I simply pressed play. The screen lit up with evidence, the splash of red wine staining my blouse. My startled gasp as the table went silent. Ava's small, steady voice saying, I recorded everything. Other clips followed. Grant shoving me against the pantry door. throwing a mug that shattered against the fridge, his voice calling me pathetic and worthless. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of his contempt echoing back at him. Ava didn't have to testify. The judge protected her from that. But she sat behind me, holding Henry's hand, watching her father's mask slip piece by piece. The ruling came swiftly. The emergency order extended. Supervised visitation only, all contact through counsel, and absolutely no private communication with Ava. Grant's face cracked when the gavel struck. He looked at me as if I had betrayed him, as though my survival were a personal crime. Outside the courthouse, winter sun glared off the steps. My breath hung white in the air, but for the first time it was steady. Henry laid a hand on my shoulder. Half the battle is keeping him out. The other half is living well. That night, we celebrated with pizza and a Christmas movie we'd missed in December. Ava curled up beside me, giggling at the screen, safe and warm. Grant was out there, stewing in his anger, plotting his next move. But in here, we had something stronger than fear. We had each other. And we had proof that no matter how many times he came back, we were ready. The betrayer had returned. But this time, he didn't find a victim. He found a fortress. The first test of our strength wasn't in a courtroom. It was in the quiet, ordinary hours when fear could have crept back in if we let it. The holidays passed, the snow melted, and life settled into a rhythm. But behind every routine, Ava and I carried a new responsibility to investigate, to build, to protect. We started with what we had. The Christmas footage was dramatic enough to open any door, but Henry reminded us, one night isn't a pattern. Courts, police, even social services look for repetition, escalation, consistency. So we began assembling the pieces one by one until the whole ugly picture was impossible to ignore. At the dining table in our apartment, we opened a fresh spreadsheet, columns stretched across the screen. Date, time, location, incident, evidence, witness, report number. Ava typed with the precision of a secretary, her small hands flying across the keys, while I sat beside her pulling out hospital bills and old discharge papers. The trick, we learned, was to strip memory of emotion. I didn't write. He scared me. I wrote, grip on right wrist, 5 to 7 seconds, left bruise 2 chaos sane neighbors. I didn't write. I thought I might die. I wrote, loss of breath for 12 seconds, recorded at ER visit 03 to 14. Facts couldn't be argued, feelings could. Ava had her own system. She created folders on the cloud, each carefully encrypted, backed up to 3 different places. 2 clouds and 1 offline, she explained with a seriousness that broke my heart and swelled it at the same time. That way, if one goes down, we still have 2 copies. She even color-coded the folders, red for video, blue for audio, green for medical scans, yellow for letters and texts. Every week, she ran an inventory, checking what was new, what was missing, what needed a backup. One evening, she showed me a page she had taped inside the pantry door, hidden behind the spices. It was titled, Recording Protocol. 1. Always state the date and time in the clip. 2. Keep the frame steady. Show a fixed object for scale. 3. If recording audio, ask a simple question. Can you repeat that? So his words are clear. I stared at her neat handwriting and felt a surge of guilt. She should have been practicing spelling words, not devising methods for documenting abuse. But then she touched my arm and whispered, Mom, this is how we stay safe. This is how we win. The investigation extended outward. At the hospital, I approached the nurse who had treated me more times than I cared to count. I asked, this time without shame, for copies of my medical records. She didn't look surprised. She printed what I needed and added quietly, "We always suspected. Now we can help." Her words were like a balm. For years, I had believed I was invisible. Suddenly, I wasn't. At school, Ava's teacher met with me after class. She confirmed she had already filed concerns with Child Protective Services. "Ava is resilient," she said, "but she carries too much. Let us help carry some." She suggested alternative assignments for Ava's family project so she wouldn't have to relive trauma at school. I left the building lighter, realizing we were not as alone as I once thought. Still, Grant tested the boundaries. A text arrived from an unknown number. "Tell Ava I miss her." Ava took a screenshot, saved it with a timestamp, and reported it to me. "Stop, log, call," she recited like a soldier. "Stop responding, log the evidence, call a trusted adult." Another time, a gray sedan idled near the school gates. I photographed the license plate, logged the time, and filed a police report. The officer's pen scratched across his notebook, and for the first time, I felt the system taking us seriously. Even our local grocer joined the investigation. He once handed me a printout from his security camera. Grant loitering by the fruit stand, clearly too close to the boundaries set by the court order. He signed the date and time at the bottom. "You've always been kind to us," he said. "Now we're kind to you." Community, I realized, is a net you don't always see until you're falling. Piece by piece, we built a fortress of evidence. Each photo, each report, each letter went into what Ava proudly called the evidence vault. She designed a cover page for it. "Truth protects us." I couldn't argue. The vault became more than a legal weapon. It became proof for us. A mirror that said, "You're not imagining this. It happened. And now it's documented." But the hardest test wasn't about Grant. It was about me. One night, while Ava slept, I sat alone scrolling through the videos. I watched myself flinch, cower, shrink. I saw my face after the mug shattered. My shoulders curled inward, my voice small and pleading. For a moment, shame flooded me. How could I have let this happen? How could I have been so weak? Henry found me like that when he stopped by to deliver groceries. He stood behind me silently until I couldn't bear the weight of the screen anymore. "Dad?" I whispered. "Look at me. Look how small I made myself." Henry's voice was steady, unyielding. "You didn't make yourself small. He tried to crush you. And you're still standing. That's strength, not weakness." The words lodged deep, chiseling away at the shame. For the first time in years, I believed him. A few days later, Ava crawled into bed beside me, tablet in hand. She showed me a clip of Grant yelling because I had bought the wrong brand of coffee. His face twisted, his voice venomous, my hands trembling as I tried to explain. "Look," Ava said softly, "this isn't love, Mom. Love doesn't look like this." I hugged her so tightly she squeaked. "You're right," I said. "Love doesn't look like this, but we'll find love that does." That was the moment I realized. The investigation wasn't just about proving what Grant had done. It was about rewriting the story we told ourselves. Not victims, not weak, not worthless. Survivors, builders, fighters. The initial test was never in the courtroom or the police station. It was in the quiet nights when fear tried to creep back in, and we pushed it away with truth, evidence, and the steady knowledge that we were no longer alone. By the time the hearing arrived, Our binder was thick, our logs meticulous, our digital backups unshakable. Grant might still try to twist words, charm judges, or rewrite history, but we had something stronger: facts, patterns, proof, and a bond between mother and daughter that no abuser could ever break. The test was over. We had passed. The investigation was only just beginning. By the time spring arrived, our apartment had transformed into something more than a home. It was a fortress disguised as a two-bedroom unit, a command center where every scrap of truth was preserved. Ava called it the vault, and in many ways, that's exactly what it became: an ever-expanding archive of proof that turned our fear into strategy. It started quietly, almost without my noticing. Ava had developed her own system for labeling and organizing. She treated each file like it was part of a school project, naming videos by date, time, and location, never missing a detail. When she recorded, she'd whisper the date aloud, sometimes panning to the clock on the microwave just to anchor it. If Grant barked cruel words, she would ask, "What did you say, Dad?" His pride forced him to repeat himself, louder and clearer, sealing the evidence with his own arrogance. The files stacked up, neat, undeniable. Photos soon joined them. Every time a bruise colored my skin, Ava would bring out the camera with a grim determination far beyond her years. She made me hold a coin or ruler against the mark to show its size, then took shots from different angles: close, mid, and wide. I used to flinch under the lens, ashamed to see myself captured like that. But Ava would look me in the eyes and say, "This isn't weakness. This is proof." She was right. Later, when I scrolled through the folders, I could see the progression: the fingerprint-shaped marks, the scrapes, the swelling. It was ugly, but it was real, and it could not be erased by his excuses. Gathering medical records was harder. Each hospital visit had once been coded in lies. I slipped on the stairs. I tripped on the sidewalk. I'm clumsy. But with Henry's encouragement, I went back and requested copies of everything. Nurses gave me quiet nods of understanding. Doctors marked charts with words like pattern inconsistent with accident. It turned out they had seen through me all along. They had simply waited for me to speak. With those papers in hand, I finally felt like I had allies in places I thought were indifferent. And then there were the witnesses. For years, I believed no one noticed, that Grant's charm had cloaked our reality. But when asked, people stepped forward. The grocer printed a camera still of Grant lingering near our building, clearly violating the boundary order, and signed his name beneath the timestamp. A neighbor admitted she had heard shouting through the walls, her face red with guilt for not knocking sooner. Ava's teacher had documented her concerns for months, noting changes in behavior and subtle flinches whenever a loud noise echoed in the classroom. Their testimonies became pieces of a puzzle that was finally taking shape. Even Grant's own words betrayed him. Every text, voicemail, or letter went into the vault. "I love you. Let's start fresh." Sat alongside, "You'll regret this." His manipulation and threats lived side by side, showing the split in his character more clearly than I ever could. Ava, always precise, color-coded them: green for apologies, red for threats, yellow for guilt trips. She scrolled through them one evening and shook her head. "He thinks words can erase actions, but when you put them all together, it shows exactly who he is." The vault wasn't just digital. It existed in layers. One copy in encrypted cloud storage, another printed and tucked into Henry's safe, a USB hidden inside a hollowed out book on our shelf. Ava explained it as redundancy. If one is lost, two remain. If two are lost, one survives. That way, the truth can't be destroyed. I laughed the first time she said it. It sounded like something from a spy movie. But then I realized she wasn't playing. She was preparing for war. Living with the vault changed me. For years, Grant had convinced me that my memory was faulty, that I imagined insults, that I invented bruises. But when I opened a folder and saw the videos, the photos, the records, I knew the truth. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't exaggerating. He had done this. And now, for once, he couldn't deny it. Still, the weight of it sometimes crushed me. Late at night, when the apartment was quiet, I would scroll through the files alone. I saw myself cowering, flinching, begging him to calm down. I saw my own smallness, and shame burned hot in my chest. When Henry found me one night with tears streaming down my face, he didn't scold me. He just laid a hand on my shoulder and said, "You didn't make yourself small, Olivia. He tried to crush you, but you're still here. That's strength." His words lodged deep, chiseling cracks in the wall of guilt I had built around myself. Ava, in her uncanny wisdom, never let the vault become only a symbol of pain. To her, it was power. She once climbed into my lap and whispered, "He can't twist the story anymore. He can't make us doubt. We know. And now everyone else can know too." I hugged her, realizing she had found a way to turn survival into strategy. The vault didn't just protect us, it freed us. Grant tried to break through in small, desperate ways. He left roses on my car. He mailed stuffed animals to Ava's school office. He wrote letters dripping with apologies, each one folding lies into flourishes. Once, he wrote, "Don't destroy our family over one bad holiday." Ava slid that letter into the vault without blinking. "Not one holiday," she muttered. 3 years. Each attempt only strengthened our case. Each attempt was another log on the fire. He didn't realize that with every bouquet, every note, every plea, he was helping us build a record of his obsession, his inability to let go, his refusal to respect boundaries. The vault grew heavier, thicker, until it felt like an invisible shield around us. I stopped thinking of it as a collection of horrors and started seeing it as our story, told truthfully, not through the distorted lens of his power. It became proof that we had endured and that endurance was not the same as consent. By summer, the vault had become so comprehensive that even our attorney called it airtight. When he flipped through the binder and scrolled through Ava's perfectly labeled files, he smiled for the first time in weeks. "This isn't just defense," he said. "This is victory, waiting to happen." For the first time, I believed him. The collection was far from finished. Grant wasn't going to disappear overnight. But for the first time in years, I felt prepared. Evidence was no longer just something we gathered in fear. It was the language of our survival, the weight of truth in our hands, the guarantee that when the moment came, justice would have no choice but to listen. Retaliation wasn't fire for fire. It wasn't about shouting louder, throwing harder, or becoming the monster that Grant had been. Retaliation, for me and Ava, was about creating a plan so tight that he would never again have a crack to slip through. It meant no more chaos, no more improvising, no more begging fate to spare us another night. We would no longer react, we would act. Henry was the first to frame it in military terms. One evening at his kitchen table, maps of the past spread out between us in the form of evidence binders and police reports. He said simply, "If you want to win, you need strategy. He thrives in disorder, so you build order. You make the battlefield yours." I nodded, not because I felt strong, but because for once I saw the truth in his eyes. I could learn strategy. Ava sat between us, her fingers already tapping on her tablet. "Then let's make tracks," she said, "like different lanes in a relay race." That's how the retaliation plan was born. The first track was safety. We mapped out every vulnerability: our apartment building, Ava's school, my commute to the hospital. Henry walked each route with us, pointing out blind spots, installing extra locks, programming emergency numbers on speed dial. Ava designed a code phrase for danger. If she texted me the word holiday, I would know to alert Henry and the police immediately. Our neighbors were quietly informed and gave us the comfort of watchful eyes. By the end of the week, the places that once felt fragile now carried invisible shields. The second track was legal reinforcement. Our attorney explained how fragile protective orders could be if deadlines were missed or if loopholes went unnoticed. So Ava built a calendar with reminders synced across all devices. Every court date, every renewal, every check-in with CPS or the visitation center was logged. We weren't going to hand Grant any easy wins. Every letter he sent, every flower he left, every attempt at contact went straight into the vault. What he thought were olive branches became nails in his own coffin. The law wasn't perfect, but with preparation, we made it work for us instead of against us. The third track was financial stability. Fear feeds on dependency, and Grant had thrived on mine for years. Selling the house was painful. It held the memory of Ava's first steps, my failed nursing applications, all the dinners where I smiled through clenched teeth. But the money it brought was freedom disguised as numbers in a bank account. I budgeted carefully: tuition for nursing school, a modest emergency fund, rent paid 6 months in advance. I told Ava, "We might not be rich, but we are free." And she grinned, tapping her calculator like a general approving supplies. The fourth track was mental health, the most fragile and most important. Therapy became routine, not a last resort. Ava had her sessions, where she learned to talk through the weight she carried instead of storing it in silence. I had mine, where I unpacked the years of shrinking myself to fit a mold Grant carved. Sometimes our sessions overlapped in family therapy. We talked about nightmares, about guilt, about how bravery doesn't always mean staying. The therapist told us, "Healing is slow, but you're already walking the road." That sentence became our mantra. As our plan solidified, I noticed changes in myself. I no longer flinched at unknown numbers on my phone. I no longer lost sleep wondering what Grant might do next. My world stopped revolving around his anger. Ava noticed too. One night, while we reviewed her math homework, she said, "You're louder now, Mom. Like your voice isn't hiding anymore." It was the best compliment I'd ever received. Retaliation wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming everything he had stolen: the ability to walk home without checking shadows, the right to study without ridicule, the laughter that once caught in my throat, now spilling freely as Ava and I burned cookies in our tiny oven and ordered pizza instead. Every smile, every confident step forward was a blow against the man who thought we would never escape his grip. Grant, of course, kept trying. Another letter arrived, claiming he had found God, that forgiveness was my duty as a wife and mother. I didn't even open it fully, just slid it into the vault. Ava smirked. He still doesn't get it. We don't need to fight him anymore. We just have to keep living. She was right. Living well was the sharpest retaliation of all. Henry often reminded us of a soldier's creed. Hold the line, protect your flank, advance when ready. We weren't soldiers in a battlefield, but the principle fit. Our line was the protective order, our flank was the vault, and our advance was the life we were building. School, work, laughter. We didn't need to strike him down. We just needed to stay steady until the system caught up. The retaliation plan wasn't dramatic. It didn't explode with fireworks or roaring speeches. It was quiet, methodical, relentless, but it worked. Every step we took away from fear, every piece of evidence cataloged, every therapy session attended, every bill paid on time, each was a brick laid on the road toward freedom. Grant thought retaliation meant I would come at him with the same fury he once wielded. He never understood that real retaliation was me standing taller, laughing louder, and raising a daughter who refused to bow to cruelty. And so we marched forward, track by track, not with rage, but with resolve. For the first time, the battlefield wasn't his, it was ours. And we were winning. The public climax didn't happen in a courtroom or with police sirens. It happened in a school auditorium, under the glow of fluorescent lights, at a community safety night the PTA had organized. Parents gathered on folding chairs, sipping coffee out of paper cups while their kids played tag in the hall. It should have been ordinary, but for Ava and me, it was the moment we stepped fully out of the shadows. I had been asked to speak. Just a short testimony, the organizer said, about resilience, about what it meant to start over after hardship. At first, I wanted to decline. My voice still trembled when I thought about Christmas, about the wine dripping from my chin. But Ava pressed my hand and whispered, "Mom, you always say bravery doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing it anyway." I saw Henry in her eyes then, and I nodded. When I stepped on stage, the microphone felt heavier than expected. Rows of parents and teachers blinked up at me. For a moment, my throat locked. But then I thought of the vault, the videos, the records, the undeniable truth. I wasn't here to beg for sympathy. I was here to show what survival looked like. I used to believe silence kept us safe, I began, that if I stayed quiet, if I kept smiling, the storm inside my home would never leak into the world. But silence doesn't protect you. It protects the person hurting you. The room shifted, subtle but unmistakable. I saw shoulders straighten, eyes sharpen. People were listening. I told them about evidence, without naming names, about logging dates and times, about photographing bruises with coins for scale, about saving every text and voicemail. I explained how evidence transforms pain into facts, facts into protection, protection into freedom. My voice grew steadier with each word until I no longer sounded like a victim, but like someone teaching a skill. When I finished, Ava took the stage beside me. She was small under the lights, her tablet clutched like a badge of honor. "I was 9 when I realized my mom needed help," she said. Gasps whispered across the room. No one expected such composure from a child. So I recorded things, not because I hated my dad, because I loved my mom, and because I learned that when adults don't do the right thing, sometimes kids have to show them how. There was no sound after that, just silence, heavy, reverent, raw. I saw mothers press tissues to their faces. Fathers clenched their jaws. Teachers leaned forward, eyes wet. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was proof that anyone could act, even a child if given the tools. Henry stood at the back, arms folded, pride written in every line of his face. Later, he would tell me that watching Ava speak was like watching a soldier take her first command. She didn't stutter, didn't fidget. She stood there like she belonged, like she had been born for that exact moment. When we stepped off stage, people swarmed us. One mother whispered, "My sister's going through something. Can you show me how to help her?" Another pressed my hands in both of hers, tears running freely. "You're braver than you know," she said. That night, our private war became public knowledge, not with scandalous headlines, not with gossip in church pews, but with neighbors and teachers and strangers looking us in the eye and seeing the truth. It was terrifying, it was liberating, and most of all, it was final. Grant had built his power on silence. With every word Ava and I spoke, we demolished it. Walking home, the city lights twinkled like Christmas decorations still clinging to January. Ava swung my hand in hers and said, "You sounded like you were teaching a class, Mom, like a professor." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. Publicly, undeniably, we were free. Consequences came slowly at first, then all at once. The restraining order was extended again, this time with stricter boundaries. No contact outside supervised visitation, no letters or gifts, no excuses. Every violation carried automatic penalties. Grant's lawyer tried to soften the terms, but the judge's gavel struck firm. The evidence spoke louder than any plea for mercy. Grant was assigned mandatory intervention classes. He protested that he wasn't a danger, that he'd just lost his temper. But the record of bruises, texts, and recordings stripped his excuses bare. When he failed to attend the first session, the court docked him visitation rights for 6 months. By the time he finally appeared, he looked smaller, not in body, but in presence. A man shrinking under the weight of consequences he never thought he'd face. His family unraveled too. Jasmine stopped calling. Kevin and Florence, who once mocked me across the dinner table, avoided me entirely in public. Their silence was a strange sort of justice. They weren't protecting him anymore, because to do so meant exposing themselves. For Ava and me, life grew steadier. The vault no longer felt like a shield we had to clutch constantly. It became a locked cabinet on a high shelf, consulted only when needed. I finished another semester of nursing school and began working shifts at the ER. Ava thrived in her STEM club, laughing with classmates who saw her as bright and capable, not as the girl with secrets. One evening, while we ate takeout on the couch, Ava leaned against me and said, "He can't reach us anymore, can he?" I thought of the distance orders, the supervised visits he hadn't dared to schedule, the judge's stern warnings, and the strength we'd built day by day. "No, sweetheart," I said. "He can't." The consequences were real. For him, they looked like legal restrictions, lost respect, and a reputation burned to ash. For us, they looked like safety, stability, and a life that no longer revolved around fear. And that was the justice we had been building toward all along. Night settles over the city, the kind of night that once made me nervous. But now the quiet feels earned. The windows glow with soft lamplight, and Ava curls beside me on the couch, her head resting against my arm as she drifts into sleep. On the coffee table, my phone buzzes with a new email. The subject line makes me pause. "Thank you. Your story gave me courage." I open it. A woman I've never met describes how she left an abusive partner after watching our talk at the school. She writes, "You showed me that silence isn't safety. You showed me evidence is power." Tears prick my eyes, but they aren't heavy anymore. They're light, almost joyful. Because this is what true retaliation looks like, not just surviving, but helping others find their own escape. Grant still exists somewhere out there, bound by laws he once ignored, facing consequences he never believed would touch him. Whether he changes or not isn't my burden anymore. My story with him has ended. Our story, mine and Ava's, is still being written. Before you go, please subscribe to our channel and tell us where you're watching from. Every voice of support helps us bring more stories of justice to light. Thank you.